Why do humans look so pretty? It was the last fleeting thought racing through Alan's mind before his spacecraft smashed nose first into the alien dirt. Plumes of razor-sharp metal shards and dark soil exploding around him. Through the ringing in his bleeding ears and the aching of his broken bones, he wrenched his body from the smoking wreckage, collapsing onto the rocky ground. Hostile ships had shot him down. No supplies, no way to call home. He was utterly alone on this hellish, uncharted world. Alan gritted his teeth and stumbled to his feet, grabbing the medkit that had tumbled out beside him. He ripped it open, hastily patching his wounds as best he could with shaking hands. He had to move, find shelter, salvage anything useful from the ruins of his ship. Above, unfamiliar stars glinted coldly in the night sky. Jagged mountain peaks loomed on the horizon, partially obscured by thick mists. A chill wind moaned through the twisted metal hulk behind him. After gathering what meager supplies he could, Alan limped away from the crash site, his breaths coming hard and fast. Each step sent agony lancing up his injured leg, but he forced himself onward. As the sun began to rise, painting the alien landscape in harsh red light, he crested a hill and froze. Below, a sprawling high-tech settlement stretched out before him, all gleaming metal and sleek curves. Vehicles darted between the buildings, far more advanced than anything he'd seen on Earth. He realized with a sinking feeling that this planet was very much inhabited. And if the ones who lived here had shot him down... A guttural clicking sound behind him. He whirled to see an armored hovercraft gliding over the rocks, a squad of armed reptilian creatures training their weapons on him. Alan slowly raised his hands, heart pounding. One of the aliens, taller than the rest, stalked forward and leveled a glowing rifle at Alan's head, hissing something in an unintelligible language. The creature's slit-pupiled eyes narrowed as it gave a warning rattle from deep in its throat. Alan swallowed hard and stayed very still. If these beings decided he was a threat, he was a dead man. The seconds stretched into a tense eternity. But then the ground shook. The aliens turned and yelled in alarm, pointing somewhere in the distance. A plume of fire and smoke was rising over the horizon, rapidly growing larger. Alan squinted, and then his eyes widened as he realized it was an asteroid impact. The shockwave was heading right for them and the alien city, faster than the speed of sound. Acting on instinct, he lunged and tackled the tall alien to the ground, just as a hunk of flaming stone the size of a bus hurtled overhead and smashed into a nearby building, sending out a hail of debris that would have crushed them both if they'd still been standing. The alien leader shoved him off and leapt up, staring at Alan in what looked like shocked bewilderment. Alan stared back, equally stunned by his own actions. He'd just saved one of them. Why? The alien barked an order and the others lowered their weapons a fraction. But the momentary calm couldn't last. In the city below, aliens were running and screaming. More flaming rocks fell from the sky, pulverizing the dead ground. A chain of explosions ripped across the valley as far as the eye could see. Angry red lines of fresh magma splitting the earth, noxious gases jetting into the atmosphere. It was a geologic event that would bring mass extinctions, and it was happening here and now. The aliens looked to their leader, who looked to Alan, scales flashing in the hellish light. Alan met that alien gaze, and a mutual understanding passed between them. A primal connection between two desperate souls, the last two apex predators on a doomed world, work together to save their peoples or be hunted to extinction by an uncaring universe. They had to act immediately. The sky was falling. Umbra led Alan through the collapsing city, dodging falling debris, and panicked Eliani. The ground shook violently beneath their feet as they approached a massive domed structure. Umbra placed his clawed hand on a scanner and the doors hissed open. Inside, a group of tall reptilian aliens dressed in elaborate robes turned and stared at Alan with undisguised hostility. Umbra stepped forward and addressed them in their clicking language. "Esteemed council members, this is Alan, the human who saved my life. He claims his people can help us survive this cataclysm." One of the counselors, an imposing figure with a red crest, pounded his fist on the table. "A primitive creature in our sacred chambers. This is an outrage." Another, even larger with pitch-black scales, fixed Alan with a murderous glare. The human is a threat. Their kind cannot be trusted. Please, just hear him out, Umbra implored. We don't have much time. All eyes turned to Alan. He took a deep breath and stepped forward. Your technology is advanced, but this catastrophe is beyond anything you've faced. I've seen your historical records. This happened before, thousands of years ago. Your ancestors survived by relieving the seismic pressure, but those techniques have been lost. Alan brought up a hologram, showing a map of the planet with pulsing red points. I propose we use a series of precise explosions at these weak points. It's risky, but it could stabilize the planetary core. The council erupted into argument. The black-scaled alien, Zorthal, was the loudest voice against the plan. Days later, Alan pored over the Iliani records. There, buried in the ancient data, he found it. A subtle pattern, the signatures of artificial explosions in a global grid. He rushed to the council with his findings. In the chamber, he faced the angry councilors once more. Your ancestors survived this before. You have grown complacent, but by working together, combining our knowledge, we can save this world. Umbra spoke up. I believe in Alan's plan. I volunteer to help carry it out. One by one, the councilors nodded their assent. Only Zorthal remained unmoved, glaring daggers at the human. As Alan and Umbra prepared the drilling rigs and explosives, malfunctions began to plague them. A power cell overloaded, nearly killing Alan, but Umbra pulled him to safety just in time. Tensions grew as the disasters multiplied. Someone was sabotaging them. Still, they pushed forward. The charges were set. The long kilometers of cables laid. Alan stood at the precipice of the deepest borehole ready to detonate when all the status lights went dark. Zorthal, Umbra snarled. The councilor's betrayal was complete. Trapped at the epicenter, Alan frantically worked to splice the damaged control lines. The ground split open beneath them, magma and poisonous gases spewing forth. I've almost got it, Alan yelled. His hands flew over the wires even as the hellish glow rose up to consume them. The detonation's blinding flash faded, leaving Alan's ears ringing. He blinked, struggling to focus through the haze of smoke and dust. Beside him, Umbra stirred, scales glinting in the dim light. They were alive. Alan pushed himself up, wincing at the pain shooting through his battered body. The ground beneath them rumbled ominously, but the violent shaking had subsided. Their high-stakes endeavor had worked, for now. We did it, Alan croaked, his voice hoarse. Umbra clicked in agreement, her reptilian features contorting into what Alan had come to recognize as a smile. Their relief was short-lived. The whine of engines cut through the air as Iliani rescue craft descended. Armored figures poured out, weapons raised. Stand down, a familiar voice bellowed. Zorthal stomped into view, rage etched across his face. This human has brought destruction upon us all. He leveled a crackling energy weapon at Alan's head. Umbra leapt between them, hissing defiantly. Move aside, Umbra, Zorthal snarled. This creature must pay for... A deafening crack split the air. Alan watched in horror as a massive slab of debris crashed down, catching Zorthal square in the chest. The councilor crumpled, dark blood oozing from beneath his crushed armor. Without thinking, Alan sprinted forward. He grabbed the edges of the debris, straining with all his might. His muscles screamed in protest, but adrenaline surged through him. With a final heave, he shoved the slab aside. Zorthal lay motionless, his breathing shallow and labored. Alan's hands flew over the alien's injuries, assessing the damage. He tore open his tattered shirt, using strips of fabric to staunch the worst of the bleeding. Umbra, he shouted, I need your med kit. She hesitated, clearly conflicted. Alan, he tried to kill you, Now, Alan barked. Umbra complied, tossing him the alien first aid supplies. Alan worked feverishly, applying pressure bandages and administering emergency medications. Long minutes ticked by as he fought to stabilize Zorthal's condition. Finally, the counselor's breathing steadied. His eyes fluttered open, focusing on Alan with a mix of confusion and grudging respect. "Why?" Zorthal rasped. Alan sat back, exhausted. "Because it was the right thing to do." The gathered Eliani stared in stunned silence. Umbra stepped forward, her voice filled with pride. "This is humanity. They fight not just for themselves, but for all life." In the days that followed, Alan threw himself into the monumental task of rebuilding. He coordinated with Umbra and Eliani disaster response teams, working around the clock to rescue trapped civilians and distribute vital supplies. Alan's knowledge of Earth's disaster protocols proved invaluable. He helped design temporary shelters capable of withstanding the continued aftershocks. Under his guidance, they established field hospitals and implemented an efficient system for food and water distribution. But as the immediate crisis passed, Alan's strength began to falter. The radiation exposure from the planetary core was taking its toll. His skin grew pale and clammy, dark circles forming under his eyes. Umbra confronted him as he swayed on his feet, organizing a new refugee camp. "Alan, you need treatment. The radiation—" He waved her off. "Not until everyone's safe. There's still so much to do." Umbra watched him stumble away, her heart heavy with admiration and fear for this selfless alien who had given everything to save her world. As weeks passed, Alan's condition deteriorated rapidly. Eliani scientists worked frantically to find a cure, but human physiology was unlike anything they'd encountered. Even Zorthal, now recovered, contributed his expertise to the effort. Finally, a potential solution emerged. Zorthal presented it to Alan, who lay weak and feverish in the hospital. "It's a gene therapy," Zorthal explained. "Based on forbidden knowledge from our ancestors, it could rewrite your DNA to resist the radiation." Alan struggled to focus. "The catch?" Zorthal's scales rippled uneasily. "The changes would be extensive. You may no longer be human." Alan closed his eyes, weighing the impossible choice before him. To live and continue helping this world he'd grown to love, or to die as the last human in a strange galaxy. The fate of two species hung in the balance. Alan's eyes fluttered open, the harsh light of the medical facility stinging his retinas. His body ached, every breath a struggle against the radiation poisoning that ravaged his cells. The steady beep of alien medical equipment filled the air, a constant reminder of his precarious condition. The door hissed open. Alan turned his head, expecting to see Umbra. Instead, he found himself staring into the reptilian eyes of Zorthal. The counselor's scales seemed duller, his posture less imperious than Alan remembered. "You," Alan croaked, his voice barely above a whisper. Zorthal approached the bed, his claws clicking against the metallic floor. "Human. Alan, I come with grave news." Alan tried to sit up, but his weakened muscles failed him. He settled for glaring at his former adversary. "What now? Another assassination attempt?" Zorthal's eyes narrowed, but there was no malice in his gaze. "No, I have seen things. Terrible things." The counselor proceeded to recount his experience with the Eliani Vision Quest. As he spoke, Alan found his anger giving way to a mix of curiosity and dread. Zorthal's voice trembled as he described the future he had witnessed. A future where Alan survived, but at a terrible cost. "Cities aflame," Zorthal said, his scales rippling with emotion. "Our people tearing each other apart. And you, a creature neither human nor Eliani, reviled by those you sought to help." Alan's mind reeled. He had been so focused on survival, on helping the Eliani rebuild, that he hadn't considered the long-term consequences of altering his very essence. "I implore you," Zorthal continued, lowering himself to meet Alan's gaze. "Do not accept the gene treatment. Let your human form pass with dignity. Save our people from the fate I have seen." Before Alan could respond, the door burst open. Umbra rushed in, her eyes widening at the sight of Zorthal by Alan's bedside. "What are you doing here?" she hissed, positioning herself protectively between Alan and the counselor. "Umbra, wait," Alan said weakly. "He's not here to harm me." Umbra turned to Alan, her features softening. The gene therapy is ready. We can save you, Alan. You can continue to guide us, to help us rebuild. Alan closed his eyes, his mind a whirlwind of conflicting thoughts and emotions. As he drifted in and out of consciousness, visions assaulted him. He saw himself, twisted and changed, standing amidst the ruins of Eliani civilization. He heard the screams of those who feared him, felt the anguish of a people divided by his very existence. When he opened his eyes again, both Umbra and Zorthal were watching him intently. Alan took a shuddering breath. "Umbra," he said softly, "I need you to help me refuse the treatment." Umbra recoiled as if struck. "Alan, no, you can't." "I have to," Alan interrupted, his voice growing stronger with conviction. "I won't be the cause of your people's downfall. My time here is done, but what I've taught you, that can live on." Zorthal bowed deeply, his voice thick with emotion. "You honor us all with your wisdom, human." Umbra clutched Alan's hand, her scales cool against his feverish skin. Tears fell from her alien eyes as Alan's breathing grew more labored. "Tell them about us," Alan whispered. "Tell them about Earth, about humanity. Let our legacy be one of unity, not division." As the light faded from Alan's eyes, he felt a profound sense of peace. He had given everything to save this world, and now, in his final act, he was ensuring its future. Umbra's anguished keen filled the room as Alan's hand went limp in hers. Zorthal stood silent, bearing witness to the passing of humanity's emissary.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.